and welcome to FYI, the BaxterStorey podcast. I'm Sam Wakeham, Head of Creative at BaxterStorey, and I will be your host for today's episode exploring Beans is How with Bettina Bordi. Bettina is chef partner at BaxterStorey and advocate for the Beans is How campaign, an initiative encouraging the substitution of meat with beans to benefit both our planet and strive towards our 30 plant target. Beyond her role at BaxterStorey, Bettina is a versatile freelance chef, dedicated blogger, and founder of Bettina's Kitchen. She's also the accomplished author of 3 cookbooks, Happy Food, 7-Day Vegan Challenge, and her latest release, Celebrate, plant-based recipes for every occasion. With January marking the season of New Year traditions like Veganuary, Bettina will be sharing her insights on the Beans is How movement, along with valuable tips for seamlessly incorporating more beans into your diet. We hope you enjoy. Hi, Bettina. Thank you for joining our podcast. It's really great to have you with us today. Your journey in happy vegan food, you shared about growing up in East Africa and then moving to Sweden in your early teens. Can you tell us about your upbringing and growing up in East Africa?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Yes, I grew up in East Africa in Tanzania from the age of sort of 0 to 11. I was born in Copenhagen, though, so my passport's Danish, just to add a little bit to the mix. And it was an amazing upbringing. It was sort of between the 80s and the 90s, sort of barefoot, shorts and a t-shirt, had access to the beach every day. And I guess also from a sort of food perspective, everything was made from scratch. I used to go to food markets with my mum. We used to have fishermen come up to our house every week with, catch of the day. If we wanted to have butter, my mum used to make butter. So supermarkets as we know them, we didn't really have that growing up. There were food shops, but sort of with limited ingredients. We were a foodie family, so all of our holidays were food focused. We weren't sort of the family that went to lots of different museums and things like that. We did, but food was always the most exciting thing. It made me have a bigger appreciation of making things from scratch and letting things take time. Both my parents were really good cooks. Both my grandmothers were really good cooks. So my grandmother from my father's side was Norwegian and my mother is Danish Bulgarian. So from her side, my grandmother was Bulgarian and both very, very good cooks as well. A Bulgarian grandmother used to go to food markets to get all of her ingredients, and my Norwegian grandmother used to grow everything. So she used to have raspberries and anything that grew in the garden. She would make pickles or jams and cordials. And so I grew up amongst some really good food and food that was cooked from scratch and where ingredients were really appreciated. And I think that's where my passion for food came from, letting things take time, I suppose.
Yeah, allowing the process.
Yes. And I guess the biggest contrast to that, which is really, really interesting, is moving to Sweden as an 11-year-old, all of a sudden having access to loads of different processed foods, I would say. And I don't think I don't want to make processed a bad word because a lot of foods are processed and they're not bad for you. However, I remember going to a supermarket in Sweden for the first time, one of those really, really big ones, and going completely nuts because I couldn't believe that there was frozen pizzas that you could just stick in the oven and it was sort of ready.
Within 5-10 minutes, yeah.
Exactly. And all like sandwich fillers and sauces and all these type of foods. And I guess went through a little bit of a period of, microwavable foods were a complete, it was mind baffling that you had a meal and you could just stick it in a microwave and it was ready. So going from cooking everything from scratch to going into a completely different environment was very, very interesting. And I've thought quite a lot about it in terms of how that's affected me. But I had my grandmother who stayed with us loads and kept things grounded by cooking things from scratch, being green-fingered and growing amazing ingredients. So that was sort of the balancing act of being exposed to all of these new things.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. How did you keep your values or what you were used to back in Africa?
I think that it's your formative years, isn't it? From the age of sort of 11 to becoming a teenager. I really struggled with moving to Sweden and I wear a little palm tree, which symbolizes it's like taking a palm tree and sticking it in the Antarctic. It's such a huge difference of environment. When I went to school in Africa, the whole school was open. There was 60 different nationalities. It was an international school, whereas the Swedish school system was completely different. I remember going to my first day of school and thinking, oh my gosh, this looks like a prison. I can't believe I have to go to this.
Yeah. The weather.
The weather, completely different. So I struggled so much the first 6 months. I had to actually change schools because I got quite bullied. It was really, really tricky for me to adjust. Luckily, I changed schools and I was fine. I sort of adjusted and adapted, much better environments school-wise.
How long were you in Sweden for?
I was in Sweden until my early 20s.
Did you go to uni?
I did go to uni. So I actually did hotel management,
Wow.
my degree. But I went to uni in Switzerland and Ireland and Spain.
You have just been everywhere.
So yeah, I did a bachelor in business within the hotel management industry.
What made you choose that course?
It was the closest thing I could get to doing food and
Right.
being in the food industry.
Mhm.
I had always had a passion for cooking. However, pursuing chefing wasn't really the thing to do. And my parents weren't really supportive of it. So the closest thing that I could get to food was to do hotel management. And I worked in restaurants from the age of 15. So
You had
it sort of-
experience.
yeah, it was a natural transition, but I was front of house. So I did a lot of food and beverage management.
And did you enjoy that course?
Yeah, I loved it. So the way it works is that you go through all the different sectors when you do hotel management. So you do housekeeping, you do 6 weeks of working in a kitchen, you do 6 weeks of working front of house, and then you do theory for the other part of the time. And then you also do internships for every 6 months. So you get a lot of insight and knowledge and experience within the industry, but within all the different sectors of food and beverage. So it's great.
A nice, well-rounded
Yes, it's
career.
great if you want to be in that.
Yeah.
So I absolutely loved it. I think I enjoyed my uni experience much more than my school experience because it was something that I really wanted to know more about.
And you said that you would cook with your grandma, I'm guessing, and your mum. Is that where you learn all your skills initially?
Yes.
Growing up.
So I would cook with my parents.
Mhm.
We had, when I was 12, we had this competition within the family where we were given a budget. And then for that budget, we would have to cook a 3-course meal. And then at the end of the month, we would sort of vote to see who'd done the best job. But I used to collect recipes in one of those, what are they called? Like the folders that you...
Like a filofax
Oh, yes,
sort of
like
thing.
a filofax.
Yeah.
Yes. That's how I learned how to cook. It was following recipes, watching my grandmothers and my mum and dad cook, going out and tasting lots of food, traveling. Traveling has been a great influence as well.
Of course, sounds like you're always in a different place.
So because my dad was Norwegian and my grandmother as well, we used to visit Scandinavia a lot. So Denmark, Sweden, and Norway while I was growing up, and just really focused on good ingredients and wholesome food. Lots of foraging, which is sort of ingrained in Swedish culture. You sort of go out and pick blueberries and then you come home and make a blueberry jam. In autumn, you go and pick mushrooms. It's just something that everyone does. And also sort of a culture of making things from scratch, baking cakes, doing things really well. There's definitely so many positives of how Scandis do things, because I think they do things very, very well. So even though I had sort of a rough start, I absolutely love and respect how Scandis do things. But I'd say focus on good ingredients, doing things really well, keeping things simple and letting ingredients shine. And fast forward to now, there's so many well-known Scandinavian chefs out there that have done fantastically well based on that.
Do you consider yourself as a Scandinavian chef as well?
Oh my gosh, I don't know what I consider myself as. A cocktail, probably. A bit of everything. Yeah, it's strange. I was in Tanzania recently, last August, and that felt like coming home. So there's definitely a part of me that loves that side of things. And it really felt like home where and also if I travel to Denmark, Norway or Sweden, that also feels like coming home. Equally when I travel to Bulgaria, that all part of me feels at home there too.
Yeah.
So
What about the UK?
yes, the UK is home now. I absolutely love London. I've got this love affair with London. I love traveling, but I always really love coming back. It's such a dynamic city. It has everything. I honestly think it's one of the best places in the world.
You said earlier that your family weren't too keen on supporting you going into being like the chef world, so you went into the hospitality course. I suppose, are they supportive of you after the course and then your pursuits to become a freelance chef and what happened later on in your career? How did you find the support from your family there?
Interesting question. I think going to a chefing school or to a culinary school just wasn't an option. It wasn't really considered a career option for me. I wouldn't say it was unsupportive. It was just not an option. My options were I was either going to pursue art or I was going to study diplomacy. So getting into politics, which is completely different, or going into hospitality, I suppose. What was the question again?
So the question was, the support from your family after the course.
Oh, yes. I went into, when I started cooking for a living, I founded a retreat company, co-founded a retreat company, and not just ran retreats, but also decided that I was going to test cook on our first retreat because there wasn't really anyone else that could do it at the time. And this was 12 years ago, and decided to cook vegan, or I now call it plant-based because it's a bit more flexy, and gluten-free cuisine. And it wasn't really a thing back then. Everyone was like, what is gluten-free and vegan foods? Strange. So, and that was in southern Spain, and we did our first retreat. I cooked on that retreat and I absolutely loved it and realized that there's potentially something here and that I could potentially make a living out of cooking this type of food. And I did that for a good 2 years, running and cooking on retreats in southern Spain, where I was living at the time. We got featured in Condé Nast Travel magazine within our first year, and things sort of happened. I think Instagram had just come out, so I started posting on Instagram. That took off. I started off by taking overhead pictures of my dishes to remember what I was cooking on these retreats. And I happened to have really colorful, funky socks because I used to travel to Korea a lot. One of my best friends from Seoul, and I had this huge collection of really funky graphic socks, and that just became a thing.
So you found your niche on social media.
Found my niche on social media, took lots of pictures, and Instagram sort of took off, and I started getting contacted by brands to do recipe development. Plant-based really took off, and I started branching out and doing more consulting and recipe development. One of my pictures got reposted by Jamie Oliver, and I think I got 10,000 followers overnight, and that sort of opened doors, and I just started sort of branching out and doing more recipe development. I was approached by a literary agent, so that's how my first cookbook came around, and this was, I think, 6 or 7 years ago, and decided to move to London when my first book was coming out to pursue a career in food. And plant-based has gone from, I guess, 0 to 100 since I started.
It's insane. I mean, we're in January, Veganuary at the moment, but the whole plant-based diet is really taken off, and you're in the best space at the moment, I suppose.
Yes, so it's a great space to be in, and I guess that's kind of how it all started. Fast forward, three books later, and here we are.
I know, 3 books.
Sitting here having a chat.
In your book, you mentioned working long hours impacted your health and because of the stresses of the job. So I suppose rewinding back a little bit, is that what made you want to try plant-based?
I think being in the food and beverage industry can be quite stressful because of the
Yeah.
long hours that you work, all the overtime that
Mhm.
sometimes isn't accounted for, the lack of self-care. A lot of people don't have breakfast. When I was working in the food industry, there was definitely sort of a fizzy drink culture that you drink fizzy drinks instead of water. I mean,
Okay.
I totally had a addiction to Coca-Cola. I mean, I remember when I used to wake up in the morning and have a Coke. I don't know what it's like now. I think it's a lot better than it used to be, but going for cigarette breaks because that is the only way that you can have a break, basically. Nobody has a break just to breathe, for example. So that's definitely not a great side to the food and beverage industry. I think it's a lot better now. People do take
Absolutely.
breaks not just to go and have a cigarette. And just food wise, not eating properly or eating very little and then eating loads in one sitting. And yeah, there's so many things that can be stressful and that lead to burnout.
And is that what happened? Did you experience burnout?
I think I just experienced sort of overwhelm and I wasn't feeling great. So this was sort of in my mid-20s. So I just made some changes, and also cooking on wellness retreats and running them and feeling much better after doing one makes you increase all of the good stuff. That's good for you. And just eating more vegetables and whole foods is good for you. There's no argument there. I think you have to have periods, and especially when you're in your 20s where you don't live healthy and where you go out loads and drink too much alcohol and all of those kind of things.
You're the founder of Bettina's Kitchen. Can you take us through what Bettina Kitchen does and what you do, I suppose, alongside being an author and a freelance chef and working with BaxterStorey and other partnerships like that?
Absolutely. So Bettina's Kitchen has got quite a few little strings. I do a lot of consulting. So I guess that's the part that I do with BaxterStorey. I do brand and recipe development on social media. So we do different campaigns. We have an amazing videography team that we do lots of work with. There's loads of stuff coming up in January with different brands. I run a retreat chef academy 4 times a year in March, May, September, and November. About to move into a new studio today, which is really exciting. And the academy teaches students how to cook in a retreat environment, which is really, really niche. But wellness is growing and there's a need for really good chefs that can cook plant-based and free from and make it tasty. I run 1 retreat a year, which is in Bali, but I also consult. So I've just come back from the Maldives. I did a collaboration with a place called Jolly Being, which is a wellness island. So I do things like that as well. And I write articles for Country and Townhouse. I had a weekly veggie column, which has now become a monthly piece, which is great.
Wow. How do you find balancing parent life and owning a business?
I guess that is that's a really good question. It is a juggle and a partnership between my husband and I. So we've always sort of taken equal responsibility for making sure that we're okay as a family and that we've got things covered. I now try and take my family on as many things as possible. So they were with me in the Maldives. They're going to fly out to Bali, which is great.
Great holiday.
They get all the benefits, don't have to do any of the work. So I try to balance work with trying to spend as much time with family as possible. I try not to work on weekends. We try and have breakfast together as a family. We do a lot of walking and swimming as a family, but sometimes that's not always possible. So we walk my daughter to school and then we swim in a pond every morning. But it's been particularly busy the last few weeks, so I've not been able to do that. But my husband swims in the ponds every morning all year round, which is amazing. But yes, I guess it's about balancing as much as possible and really making sure that when you have time together that
Yeah.
you count.
So beans is how is the main crux, I suppose, of this conversation. And you joined BaxterStorey as a chef partner. First of all, how have you found working in the catering world and working with BaxterStorey?
It's been great. It's been such a good experience. I've really enjoyed getting to know the teams and the venues and everyone that works at BaxterStorey. It's been really interesting engaging with all the clients. I also think that it's such a great forward-thinking company in the sense that BaxterStorey is willing to break boundaries and sort of be the first in many, many things within an industry that is quite set in their ways. I find that really inspiring and lovely to be a part of. And it's exciting to see what's to come.
Oh, there's so much going on. And beans is how is one of those things.
Yes.
So am I right in saying you're an ambassador? Is that the right word for beans is how?
I think ambassador. I'm part of Beans is How and trying to talk about it and get as many industries involved as possible.
And for those who don't know what Beans is How is, it's a global campaign with the mission to double the consumption of beans by 2040. Am I right in saying?
I think it's 2028.
Oh, wait, but the Beans is How aim is to emphasise the importance of including beans in meals and move to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the food system. And remarkably, beans contribute to a 90% reduction compared to certain animal-based food. Can you tell us more about the Beans is How campaign and what attracted you to champion it?
Yes, so it's about doubling the consumption of beans, showcasing that they are really good for the environment and for health reasons, or for different health reasons. And what's attracted me to it is that it's such an easy solution. Grow more beans, eat more beans, and it can be the problem solver for so many different areas within the issues that we're facing at the moment. I think the simplicity is what drew me to it, and it can be implemented in so many different areas. You know, restaurants can add more beans to their menus, families can add more beans and pulses into their diets. And I guess that's what we're trying to do with BaxterStorey as well, is to include as many beans and pulses as possible throughout the business, which ticks off a lot of boxes within sustainability. So it's just a simple solution to...
Why beans though? I mean, what is it about beans that's so special?
Well, they are full of fibre, really easy to grow. They are inexpensive and can be made absolutely delicious and can be eaten in so many different variations. And I suppose that's what we're trying to do here, is use different, I've created some recipes with using beans so that it's not just an addition to a salad, for example, or a bean soup. You can eat it as a dip. You can even make sweet treats with beans. I do a chocolate banana muffin using chickpeas, and when you taste them, you wouldn't even know that they were there. And they're also completely gluten-free, wheat-free. So I think there's a lot of magic with beans. They are just underappreciated. They've got a not so great reputation. And I think that not everyone knows how to cook and prepare them properly. If you've had a bad experience with beans, you sort of put them to the side and go, I'm not going to try that again. So the campaign is all about changing perception and making them popular again.
And what is your role in that? Have you found using social media or your cookbooks? Is that how you're trying to get that message across?
Within BaxterStorey?
Just in general.
Oh, just in general. So many of my recipes in my books and on my feed already contain beans. So it's just highlighting that now and reposting recipes that are already
full of beans anyway.
Yeah, that are already full of beans anyway, and highlighting that they're great and tasty. They're definitely having a moment with companies like Bold Bean & Co. that have done really well. Hodmedods that have been around for years and that I've known for years through expos that are farming incredible different varieties of beans that have been forgotten, and grains for that matter. So Carlin pea is an example of a bean that, is having a little bit of a comeback which is great. There's so many different varieties other than, chickpeas, for example. So lots and lots to discover, really.
And I think so many people just think baked beans when they think beans in the UK, so it's good to open up the variety to people as well, what's out there.
Exactly. And also highlight baked beans. It's great.
They're still great.
They're still fantastic on some toast. There's nothing wrong with that.
In your opinion, what are the benefits of having a more bean-based diet to your body?
From a protein content point of view, from a fiber point of view, we don't eat enough fiber in this country. So it's really important in terms of varieties, in terms of gut health. There's so many benefits to eating beans and just including them. Try including them twice a week, I would say, and just get your favorite brand. If you don't like cooking them, then there's so many different options, ways to buy them ready.
So would that be your rule, try and have them twice a week?
I would say try and have them at least twice a week. That's a really good start. Just be aware of it. It's also from a price point of view. I know that things are getting more expensive. It's an inexpensive way of getting good stuff into your body.
What are some of your favourite bean recipes on a budget and a really delicious dish? What would you recommend?
So if you have a sweet tooth, I definitely recommend the chocolate banana muffin. They're so easy that you just chuck everything into a blender. Like a butter bean, it's like a butter bean hummus with sticky leeks on top. So it's a really good, or bread, basically. Just a really good sort of bean soup is really delicious as well, with loads and loads of veggies. I call them sad vegetables. If you've got any sad vegetables in the fridge, you've had the best intentions with. It's great to just use them up, add them into a curry, add some beans, or do a bean soup or a sort of a minestrone type of dish. Pasta fagioli is one of my favorite dishes that my Italian father-in-law cooks. It's beans. It's a pasta dish, but made with beans, and it's really, really hearty. If you're, I think it's made with pancetta as well, but you can omit the pancetta and just do caramelized onion. It's a really good, hearty, wintry dish.
I need to check that out. Are you fully plant-based? Do you still eat meat?
I am what I would call flexi, yeah. Predominantly plant-based. I think the most important message that I want to portray is to add as many vegetables into your diet as possible, what I would call whole foods, so pulses, grains, veggies, fruits, nuts, and seeds. And if you are going to eat animal-based products, to choose better quality and less quantity. And that is a good goal to have. Add as much variety as possible. Subscribing to VegBox is one of the easiest things that you can do to support local and seasonal produce. And it will also make you cook with ingredients that you might normally not purchase. So we're in winter season now. Things like it's root heavy. The things like swede and celeriac and those type of vegetables might not be the ones that you
would pick up in
purchase.
No.
But now is the best time to have them because they're at the peak of tasting really good.
Have you found any challenges trying to convert people to beans as how?
I think beans just have a bit of a bad reputation.
What is the why? What is the rep?
Gassy.
Yeah.
They make you get taste. I think not cooking them properly, and I totally get that. Beans need to be cooked properly so that they're really nice, soft and mushy. That's the tastiest way of eating them, and not everyone cooks them to that end. So yeah, I think mostly from sort of a cooking point of view, and maybe from a cultural point of view as well, beans and pulses are consumed a lot in the Mediterranean diet, and I just don't think that they are culturally consumed as much in the UK, except for, beans on toast or baked beans. The beans is how throughout BaxterStorey's will hopefully showcase that you can use beans in many different variations. So there's a non-meatball recipe, there's the chocolate banana muffin recipe, there's a bean soup, there's a nacho plate with black beans, there's a dal that's got double pulse in it, so lentils, and then it's topped off with crispy chickpeas. So it's just showcasing that they can be eaten in various shapes and sizes and ways, not just as a salad filler.
Have you found that the chefs within BaxterStorey and I suppose the industry are willing to take on more beans in their dishes?
I think so, yes, definitely. So far, we've had a really positive reaction to it. I think given the tools and being able to sort of have beans through the supply chain will definitely help
that. Yeah.
And just being more aware of it. There's loads of information on beans as how in terms of health benefits and all of that kind of stuff and recipes as well.
Great. So I've pulled together a couple of true and false statements about beans, and it's a bit of a test your knowledge, but also a little bit of fun as well. So first one, to kick it off, beans can help with menopause symptoms. Is it true or false?
I think there's studies being done on soybeans and they contain phytoestrogens. I'm not a nutritionist, but if you are interested,
have a look.
You can have a little Google. But yes, apparently so.
Correct. That is correct. Eating beans regularly can help lower cholesterol levels.
Yes, I think this has got to do with the fibre. I'm not completely mistaken.
Yes, you are right. There is high levels of fibre content in beans, which help lower your cholesterol levels and promote heart health, which is really great to know. Do baked beans count as one of your 5 a day?
I would say yes.
Yes, you are right. And when I first saw this question, I thought, no, surely not. But it actually does. Baked beans count as one of your 5 a day. Any bean or lentil counts towards your 5 a day, and that includes baked beans.
I think with baked beans, there's so many different brands and varieties now. I guess the thing that you need to look out for is the sugar content.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
There are brands that are sugar-free. So lots of options.
Yes, absolutely. Rinsing canned beans reduce their nutritional value.
I don't think so.
You're right. It's false. So rinsing canned beans helps reduce the sodium content, but doesn't affect the nutritional value, which is good to know. So please rinse your beans.
I always rinse my beans.
Kidney beans should be consumed raw for maximum nutritional benefit.
I don't think any bean should be eaten raw.
Kidney beans can be harmful if not cooked properly. Cooking eliminates lectins, making kidney beans safe to eat. My last question, black beans and black-eyed peas are the same. Is that true or false?
I don't think they are.
No, they're not. Black beans and black-eyed peas are different types of legumes with obviously different flavours and textures and nutritional profiles. Thank you, Bettina. Is there anything else you want to add to our Beans is How conversation?
Thank you so much. If anybody wants to know more, definitely pop on to the Beans is How website. Really looking forward to implementing more of the Beans is How campaign into BaxterStorey in 2024. I'm working closely with Lizzie Henning on making that happen, which is very exciting. So hopefully we'll see you in loads of different venues throughout the year, implementing as much of the Beans is How as possible. There are recipes available. I think they will be trickling out on social media and be made available on BaxterStorey as well. Keep an eye out.
Thank you, Bettina, so much for joining us. Thank you for listening to this episode of FYI. We hope you found inspiration and insight into the Beans is How campaign with our special guest, Bettina. If you would like to learn more about Bettina and try out some of her delicious recipes, please visit www.bettinaskitchen.com and also check out her social media. And if you've enjoyed today's discussion, don't forget to subscribe and enjoy more of our conversations. Thank you.